Well, welcome back to Watercolor Studio 42, and today I'm going to be kind of concentrating a little bit about how to do an ocean scene, the waves hitting the shore, the rocks, ledge or cliff or whatever you want to call it, and I want to talk a little bit about maybe how to manage the sky, how to put the clouds in the sky. Also, to get the softness of the spray off the rocks too. So with watercolor, it's the emphasis on the water and how you can, kind of loosen the water up and not go too heavy with the paint, kind of thin the water down with the paint. So that's what we're going to be doing a little bit of today. I did start one time. It looked something like this, okay? And I start with the sky, and then do the rocks, and then I do a little bit of a texturing. I use a piece of plastic. Literally, it's a cut-up credit card, if you will. And I have a lot of cut-up credit cards, ones that have expired. But the thing is, what I do with that is kind of scratch through the wet paint to create the rock effect, the effect of the rock texture, if you will. Now, then my final touch would probably be a couple of little V-shapes, if you will, that represent birds flying around. But anyways, it's the emphasis on how to put the wash on for the sky, the softness of the clouds, how you can blot it, pull it, whatever you want to do with that, the texture. And we'll see if we can get this seashore of the of this particular seascape finished. Okay, so I'm going to put this down for now, and oops, turn it around so I guess I can look at it. Not that I'm going to copy it. I do a minimal amount of sketching, and you probably won't pick it up too well on television because I sketch light with a pencil at first, and then from there I kind of do most of the drawing, if you will, with the brush, with the paint, and using my little plastic card that I have. I keep Q-tips handy. You never know when you want to use a Q-tip here and there to blot something or whatever, to pick up a speck or something like that. Okay, so here we go. Now, the first thing I'm going to start with, usually if I'm doing an outdoor scene, I always start with the sky up at the top first, and then do the ground, and then do all that in between. But a lot of times you have to let the sky dry a little bit at first, when you're starting off here. So now, let's start with the sky. I always start with the biggest brush I have. In this case, this is a round. They call it a round brush, and this is probably a number, well, hard to see the number, but it's probably around a 27, number 27. It's a pretty good sized brush. And so when I do this, I start up and I just wet the paper. This is when the water's still clean. And I wet the paper and see, like this. Now, I don't want to get it too wet because I got to give it some time to dry a little bit. You get it too many puddles there. So sometimes what I do, I wet the paper where the sky area is going to be. And then if I see a puddle or something, I just sweep across with a paper towel. Usually what I do is I'm working with the brush in one hand and a paper towel. So sometimes I'm putting down a brush stroke and then blotting it to kind of lift some of the paint out. So let's see if we can get started with this. Now, the color that I have what they call phthalo blue, but actually it's like a cerulean blue. It has a little bit of green, just a spot of green in the blue. So I'm going to mix some in this middle tray area here, palette. And just go across the paper with a little bit of a wash. Now, if it's coming out too dark, I'm going to just do this. I'm going to just get some of that paint out of the brush, blot it with a paper towel, and then start pulling it across and make it a little bit lighter. It does thin out anyways when you put the paint on. So we're just going to put a little bit of a wash in there for the sky. Now the sky doesn't have to be, you don't want to spend too much time on the sky, but you just want to get some paint into that wet area that you have. And then you take a paper towel, and then if you want to put some clouds in, while the paper's still wet and it hasn't absorbed into the paper, you go like this. Just blot it and pull through and make some shapes for the clouds. You can take your Q-tip. Q-tips you can kind of, if you want to make some smaller shapes and so forth in there, some texture, you could use a Q-tip. See how you can kind of work that around with a Q-tip. You just, what it amounts to, you're just picking up some of the paint off the paper. And that's the beauty of watercolor, because it is kind of transparent. And you want some of the white of the paper sometimes to show through. See how we can get different effects by just tapping with the Q-tip in there and just pulling it out. When it looks okay, if it looks okay, I don't touch it too much. Now sometimes a cloud has a soft edge, almost as if you could almost take it with another bigger brush and just pull. That's not the one I want. I guess I want a flat brush here. And you could just pull some of the edge off. See it? Just sweep it a little bit. Almost a feather touch with the brush. You don't have to press too hard. And pull some of that. Sometimes a windy day, the clouds are sort of pulling out like horse's tail. So you can do that with the brush. You can pull that out. There you go, something like that. Now, if you don't want this edge down, ooh, this came out good. I probably wouldn't even have to touch it here. But over here, if the edge is a little bit hard, you could wet it before it settles in too much and just pull some of that edge out. Just take some of the edge off, see, like that? So you make it look like it's misty. Give it some, sort of like, you know, the mist or the spray from the water. Just break that, give it a softer edge. Okay, something like that. See how you get that effect, though, with a minimal amount of labor. I think some people, they try to get too bogged down, they get too fussy. You know, you can't get too fussy. With watercolor, you try to solve the problem with the least amount of effort. That's a new quote I just came out with. Solve the problem with the least amount of effort. But that's what it amounts to a lot of times when you're painting. I think some people, when they paint, a lot of times they get a little bit too uptight with it. And that's what you have to get used to, that idea. Now, let's see. While I'm at it, while I'm using the blue, why don't we take some of that blue and just kind of drop a little bit of it in the corner over here. And we'll put a little bit up in here. And again, what I do is take the brush and just soften the edge off. See? Make it look like it's just spray in there. You can take that edge right away. Pull it out. Now, the effect that you can get with watercolor is a little different than maybe some other media that you're working with. Let's see, we'll pull some of that out into here. I just put a little bit more paint in this corner. The worst thing is to have a white piece of paper. You have to do something with the white. And let's take some of that edge away. A little bit in here. Now, I got to leave room for the white so that I can pull that wave up hitting the rocks in through this area. I left a little pencil mark in there with a little swoop to it, so that it reminds me that that's where I have to swoop. And save some of the white of the paper while you're at it. Okay. Now these seascapes, you can do them, well, I'd say relatively fast, as long as you don't get into trouble with it. What I mean by trouble is that you have an area that you don't like, and you have to try to spend time to erase it, you know. So that's the thing. You just put it down. For the most part, I always tend to paint a little bit lighter, because I can always go darker easier than I can to paint too heavy and then have to try to scrub it out. And blue, some of the blues, they're real stainers. That color, once it settles in, it's hard to bring it out. Okay, here we go. That looks okay for now. So I'm just dabbling around. You never press hard with the brush. It isn't like painting this wall of a building or anything like that. You're just hitting the paper very soft, like that. Okay? You've got paint pretty much on all the paper right now. You've got it all on there. And I go right to the edge because I have like a false edge that I use with the masking tape. I'll show you how that works towards the finale when we kind of get the picture finished a little bit. Okay. Now, if it's a little bit too wet, and you want it to dry a little faster, I just hit it with a paper towel. Take some of that paint out. You don't want too many puddles because the puddles take longer to dry out. See what I've got? Sort of an effect. Combination of sky and the spray of the ocean. Now, now I have to consider coming in with a little bit heavier with the rock shapes. And I can decide what I want the rocks to be, whether they're going to be gray or have some color to them. They're going to have a light side. I forgot to mention that I usually put an arrow over here with the sun, so I know which direction the sunlight's going to be coming from. I put that out on the tape, so it doesn't interfere with your picture. Okay, so here we are. Let's get rid of this Q-tip, and now we have to decide what color we want to get with the water. Not the water, the rocks. I'm sorry. The water on my mind, I guess. Now, I think it's dry enough. We just hit it a little bit more, get rid of that, get a clean-up towel here. And what we want to do now is to decide, you're going to have some real jagged rocks, a lot like the Maine coast. Down around our area, we have the Cape, you know, beaches are sandier. Up further north, it seems to be there's less sand and more pebbles and rocks and things along the shoreline. So now, okay, not coming along. Now that edge there it's going to be like they call it a stain. And if it looks okay, I just leave it. If I don't want to keep it there, I can always wet it and erase it with the brush. Now, how do I want to do this? I think I want to have, I'm going to do this with a pencil just to bring this out to remind myself where to go. I'm going to have a real jagged, darker area right in here. And then I'm going to break this down, break this up, break it down so it goes down. Kind of forms a very irregular, bumpy triangle in here, triangle. And then you're going to have something coming out over here, okay? I'm not crazy about the contour of the shape, so I might change that as we go along. So we've got something over here. So you got one, maybe a little bit of something might project over into here. Let's put that as a 1, 2, and a 3, and see what that looks like. Now, I've got to have my little piece of plastic handy, so that just as soon as I put some paint down, I can start pushing this little piece of plastic around to kind of bring up some of the texture on the rock, okay? Sometimes it works better than others, okay? So we'll see what happens. Get rid of that. Now, I have to decide what color. I have, right here, I have some of my, this one up here, the color I have is Payne's Gray, and the other one is sepia. It's a very dark brown, and of course Payne's Gray is sort of a darker color gray. Once you dilute it down, it comes out pretty much of a grayish color. And then some of the other things, we'll see what happens. So I'm going to take, let's see, how about using maybe one of these flat brushes and take a little bit over here. I'm going to take some of that Payne's Gray, mix that in the middle, and then I'm going to just see if I can put a little bit of the brown in with it. I don't like to paint directly like black, you know, from the tube. I always like to put a little bit of a color into it. Sometimes you can put a little bit of red into black and makes black look darker than what it really is. So, okay, so keep this piece of plastic handy here and remind myself that we got to hit it. And now I'm using a flat brush, so some of these rocks can be a little bit jagged. They can be a little bit jagged, the way I even fill it in. And I have to leave a little bit of something else in here. Oh, I got something else projecting in there. Put that in. Okay, now I got to have this wet enough so I can pull my piece of plastic around. This is a combination of sepia. These rocks, I did it almost like monochromatic, using one color here. But we're going to make this one look a little bit more like rocks are, the color of rocks. Okay, something like that. You'll pull that. Okay, before this gets dried out, now I'm going to take the credit card. I'm going to pull that down. Let's see if I can make this edge not quite as bumpy there. Have this project out a little higher up into there. Okay, that looks pretty good. Actually, it looks almost like I should leave it alone. But we'll just take our card now. See how I'm pulling the paint around, and it brings out some highlight on the paint. Now you can also use the edge, the sharp edge of the corner of your piece of plastic that you have, and you can score in here and just cut into your paper a bit so that when you drag the paint over that, the paint will settle in and it will look like a thin mark on the stones. Some of the texture. That looks pretty good right now. Not too bad. I'm constantly changing the contour of the top here. That will happen. And this is going to go down. This one here, let's catch that before it dries. And give that a little bit of highlight. Now, if I'm going to make any side of this, the ledge or rocks here, lighter, it's going to be the sunlight's hitting, coming in from the right, so this side is going to be lighter. The right side here is going to be a little bit lighter. See how that texture's working out? And all you're doing is just pushing the paint around, and if it looks okay, just don't keep tampering with it. I'm going to put the card down. And now, we mentioned a little bit about a spray. So I'm going to take, along the edge here, there's going to be a little bit of softening out, making the rocks look a little bit transparent, letting the spray cut up into that area. Just this bottom part here. Let's pull that out a bit. Okay, right around there. There's going to be some spray coming out. Just kind of dance around here a little bit. Okay. Now this part looks pretty good. I might have to scratch it, just a little bit more contour. I have to catch it before it dries too much. And I don't want to let this top here. Let's just fill this in while we're at it. Fill that right in there. And now you could take your brush too. You can pull some of the paint out too if you want some of the texture to be lighter on one side than the other. Yeah, once it looks sort of natural. I have spent some time along the Maine coast. I'd say overall probably maybe 2 or 3 times that I've visited up there for a week. I usually go for a week, one of these trips that you take. I used to have the luxury of having the summer off, when I was teaching in the schools, public schools, have the summer off. A lot of people used to kind of say, boy, you teachers have it made. You have the summers off. Okay, now, that's kind of interesting. And then I think I want to do a little bit more. I talked about doing something out into here, having some of the rock showing through out in that area. This probably doesn't look too natural there. And I think I've got to come back in with just a little stronger pigment on the what would be the shadow side. This gets a little bit fuzzy in here. Let's kind of clean that up. Sometimes if you don't let the sky dry or the color next to it dry enough, it gets a little bit fuzzy. So I'm just going to kind of solidify that area a little bit more. Put a little bit more dark down in here. No, that's looking better. Okay. See if I can touch this up a little bit in here. Okay, do I need to use my credit card again? I'm not sure. Let's see what I can do with it. Once the paint starts to dry in, it's hard to scrape any of the paint around, push it around, plow it around, whatever. Let's do something with this. Okay. Not bad. I think I'm just going to take the brush and lift some of that color off the light side. Okay. Now, if there's any other color that you want to add in here, you can. I just want to just kind of bump this edge up here a little bit more. Clean it up a bit. when I say cleaning up, I mean just kind of getting some of the fuzzy stuff off and keep that a nice sharp edge. See a lot of fuzzy stuff up in here. Just clean that up a bit. There we go. I can always wet this and then take my piece of plastic and scratch it. If I don't like the texture, I can always go back and change a lot of that. Okay. So now I've filled a lot of this in, so my spray is going to be actually hitting out there. I was going to have it come in a little bit more into here, around into this area. I could still do that. Make a minor adjustments here. Let's go back to get more blue in there. Maybe we can hit that a little deeper with some of the blue, the paint. But again, you gotta kind of be careful about that. And make sure you water it down, because blue does stain quite a bit. I don't know if that's going to make any difference, but let's put some of that darker color in there. And before it can settle in, we got to take a bigger brush. I used to have one of those powder puff brushes, and I used to come in and just powder puff it a little bit. Now what we want to do here is take some of the harshness out of that and just kind of pull that paint out and around, so it's not it gets a little bit too dark. Of course, it's going to be darker anyways into here. And you know what I did today? I brought along some of my white acrylic paint. So if I get too heavy with the color, I can always go over that and touch it up with the acrylic paint. They do have a color, a watercolor that's called Chinese white, but it doesn't seem to be strong enough to hide, if you want to hide a darker color. It just doesn't cover very well. I'm going to just leave that. That was kind of interesting up in there. And just have that kind of fuzz out a little bit into the corner. Now, I'm wiggling the brush around, almost like the way the water might work, the way it comes around the spray and all that. A little bit into here, a little bit more contrast over into here with some of the blue. Okay, now you don't want the water, especially the ocean, to be probably exactly the same color as the sky. The ocean salt water, it does have a tendency to be a little bit on the, has a little bit of green to it. So what I do sometimes is come back into here and just give it not so much of a heavier coat, because you don't want it to look like grass growing on the water. So what I do is just wiggle that around and just kind of mix some of the green in there, but then wash it down quite a bit so it doesn't look too greenish. That might be a little bit much. So what I do, take my paper towel, clean my brush off, and see if I can get some of that to blend in a little bit more. Let some of that, more of the green, I should say more of the blue come through. Got enough of the green, just soften that out. Just a hint of that it's a different shade than the sky. Go easy over here with that. Just a little bit. You can borrow a little bit from here, put it over there. You just want a hint of that. Okay. I like that little area there. kind of interesting. Now, as far as the spray goes, I can get some of the spray out here and get some of that. And what I want to do in here is just get some more color into that. Again, just a little bit more of a hint of the salt water there. Not too much. You know, carried away with the blue or the green. There you go. Maybe a little bit of that out in there. And I want to get this corner. See what we got here. See a little bit more blue over here. Maybe just in this corner, go a little bit darker with some of that blue or bluish green. Get some of that color in there. Just put a pinch more of that. I don't want it to look like grass either, you know. See, that's too much green. So let's see if I can get some of that out of the brush and just blend it into the blue more. Not bad. Let's get some of that over into the corner like that. And if I'm getting too much into that, I'm going to come back and hit that with some more blue into the green. If we could do that. Oops, I'm still getting the green. Maybe I should let it dry a little bit before I start tampering with it too much. Okay. I'm using my paper towels up pretty good. I'm due for another roll there. Okay, let's blot some of this down. Of course, all of this will change, you know, in the morning. What we have now started to get a little bit smudgy into here. I want to take some of that away. Take some of that out of there. Okay. Yeah. Now, okay, so now a lot of times what you have to do, you have to take this and look at it after it's really dried out. Give it a little bit more time to dry out a lot of times and see if it will help that. Now, where do we have? Oh, I think I want to go a little bit more with my sepia and see what we have here. Usually I have a little scrap of paper that I test my color on, but that's all right. We can manage somehow. Yeah, let's get a little bit darker into there. All right. I want to wet this down a little bit more. This is just along the lower portion here. Need some contrast in there, so that's why I'm doing this. Now, whether you want to go back and use a little bit of the plastic in there, let's get a little bit of dark color right up in there. Get some shadow in there, whatever, in back of the rocks. And if you want to go over that, now you can do several glazes. My gosh, you could go glaze one color on top of another on another. We had a man one time that did a demo, and he said to create the illusion of the goldfish under the water, he put about 30 glazes. That sounds like a lot of different color blending over, so to make it look like the fish were in the water. Okay, see how you can kind of scratch around here? If you like it, you leave it. But it might need a little bit of breaking up into here. Okay, now you can put off in the distance, you can put like maybe the ocean line. Now, usually I use a ruler, or you can just, I thought I had one with me somewhere in the back here. I'm kind of working out of a tray lately instead of using my, they call what I use normally is my cookie box. But I've been using this to travel lighter. But you could use a ruler and just lay that across here, kind of get it even, water seeks its own level, and you can just dash in the ocean. And I'm just going to use a little bit more blue. Let's see if I can get the ocean back here, just across here. Yeah, like that, okay. Get that line straight, and then what I do with that, kind of scary, isn't it? Leave that line like that. But what you do is just take that line and just pull it down underneath that. Just pull that out. Just pull that out somehow. You can show boats off in the distance if you want. You can show another landform way off in the distance. Sometimes I use masking tape too, rather than the rule. I just lay a piece of tape across this. Now, if this gets a little bit bumpy, what we do is just take this edge and make it look like it's the sky. Just add some color under it, like the mist rolling in off the ocean. Just have to make sure you just kind of feather it out, make it kind of light. Sometimes you get a nice shade of blue when you do something like this. Yes, pull that across here, and just, here you go. Very nice and soft. I'm just barely touching the paper. There you go. Put that, just get these special effects in there. Now, what else do we need? I think I want to get this, kind of just put a little bit of color in there. Maybe something else coming up in here. I think we got too much white in there. Sometimes you can show a little bit of sand, beach off in the distance too. All depends on what it kind of, the illusion comes out looking like. That's why sometimes when you start off doing a picture, you're going in one direction, and pretty soon you say, oh, yeah, it might look better if I did this and that, added another rock or two or whatever it might need. I just clean that off. Sometimes I put a sailboat or something way off in the distance there. Let's get that out of there. Push all that up. That line, if it looks a little bit hard, I just take my brush and just soften that out. Just blend it out like this. Yeah. So that's the effect that we're looking for. Now, this looks a little bit kind of smudgy in through here. So we might have to take and go over this a little darker, put some, maybe some color back into it, or contrast, if not so much color, but contrast. See if we can make this a little bit darker over here. And I just pull the paint right across through here, kind of follow the contour of the rock, and kind of clean it up a little bit more over here. That edge, make it look like it's more in the shadow here on the back. And of course the shadow is always going to be darker back up in here too. You know, around the base of the the stones. The darker you get there, the more you notice the spray. That's a little bit hard here, so I might have to take that and just take it and pull it out a little bit more. Take the edge off. And if it needs a little bit of scratching, you can take your plastic and pull that through the wet area, and you can kind of change it a little bit, you know, whatever you want the texture to become. Okay, now, what else we need? I guess we're doing all right. I've got some darker color I can put in here, but I may want to do something in this corner, so I may want to make this down here, just along the bottom edge, just a little bit darker shade in there, just to give it a little bit more foundation. Okay, just push that up into here. Let's see how we're doing. Yeah, not bad. Not bad. See how that works a little bit? Just needs a little bit more oomph down in the foundation, just to push everything up. Now I'm not getting the effect I'm looking for as much. I might have to take a little bit more. My water got a little bit dark there, so we'll put a little bit of cleaner water in a bucket here. See what we could do. Okay. Clean my brush off a bit. All right. Now, what I'm going to do here is just take a little bit more of this and just kind of take some of the edge off. Take some of the edge off here. And break this up a little bit more down there in the corner. I think this needs a touch of something darker here, just along the bottom. Yeah. Now this particular painting is going to be quite a bit different from that one. Not quite. It's the same subject, but basically, it's a little bit different in that respect. And it might need just a little bit more fussy work with maybe a credit card, scratching it a little bit more, just bringing out some of the texture. Sometimes I take a knife or a razor blade too, and I just scratch through it and bring out some more of the undercolor of the paper white. Just scratch through there. You can take like a razor blade too and cut into that and bump it up a little bit more. Okay. There's going to be certain things that will need a little bit more dark color. See if I got a smaller brush. Somewhat. Maybe there's one in here. I don't think so though. Nope. Okay, we'll leave that out there. Then now let's see. I'm just kind of going over this. I think this needs just a little speck of contrast here. A little texture there out on this rock. Kind of a dry brush effect, that's all you need. A little dry brush effect maybe over here. Okay, and then if you're nearing your finish line here, sometimes what I do is take a fine marker or whatever you have handy, maybe a pen even. If I got a pen in here or not. Check over here. Sometimes I have a pen. That's a little bit too much. Oh, okay. Well, what I do have, I have one of those very fine brushes. Sometimes they refer to this brush as a liner brush, a scripto brush, or a rigger brush. Probably the term rigger is more common. And right here, you can put a bird. Just doesn't have to be much. Just kind of lift up a little bit. That's a little bit dark. Maybe I can catch that with a piece of paper towel. Looks like I'm getting near the end of the roll here. All right, let's get that a little bit. All right, pick that off. Now, what I was saying before, if you don't like a particular thing, there's a speck there. If you don't like it, that's where the white comes in. I take a little bit of my white. Now, I use acrylic white, and not like I was saying, the Chinese watercolor white. Take a little bit of acrylic because it's a little thicker and it covers. So if I don't want that shape to be there, I just hit it with a little bit of white. See how you can take that out of there? And just wiggle the white around. Just make it look like it's supposed to be the cloud that shape. Just take it right out of there. You get a speck down here too. And if you don't like a speck here or there, that one I don't have to take that out with the white as much. But what I do with that one, if I don't like that speck there, I just come back in and just put some darker blue into it and wiggle the brush around. And again, you can hide some of that. See it? Take it out of there. Take it right out. Now, if that's too noticeable, you just hit it with a paper towel and you can lighten it up, blot it. There you go. Okay, I'm going to erase some of the specks there. They could be, the little specks could be about anything in the water. Take that, look like a fingerprint over here. Just erase that. So now it's just a matter of what you want to do with it, how much you want to put shadow in some of the foam. You can do that, whatnot. All right, erase it if you want. Okay. And when you get to a certain point, I usually take a pen or something and just put some specks in there. You could use a pen or anything. You can have some little texture, little specks on there, like little bubbles and, texture. And you could certainly put back a bird. Usually I use a pen to do that. Put some of the birds flying over. So that will finish that up pretty good. So there's a lot of things that you can do. I usually work on it a little bit the next day, see where that needs to be. That rock is a little bit too light over there, so you want to just go back in and just hit that with a little bit of texture there. Maybe a little bit more water on the brush would help too. How's that? Whoa. There we go. Just make that a little bit more noticeable. As you go towards the edge of the paper, pull that down. Okay. Whatever you'd like. This gets a little bit fuzzy in there too. I think this still needs a little bit more texture in here. Just a little bit more contrast in there. I'll take this out, just soften that out a little bit more. Put some more foam in here. Take some of that out of there. Yeah. Something like this. Just wiggle the brush around a little bit, create a little bit more texture. I often said, you know, you can't go too far wrong with nature because nature does some real fantastic things on its own. How it polishes the shells and all that, and different textures. Okay, now what I'm going to do here is I put some tape around the contour, and I might have to turn it over on the back to get at it. A little bit. Normally I have a masonite board that I use, but I've been trying to cut down on the weight of carrying everything in the bag. So having said that, I can take some of this off here. I think. When you put tape on cardboard, it's a little bit tougher than maybe using a more of a firmer board, like masonite board would probably be a little bit better to use. There we go. Take some of that off. And the idea is what the tape does is make a sort of a false mat around your artwork. You see, it cleans it up a little bit more. I think sometimes what happens is that once you lock a picture in, wait a minute, get some more back here. Once you lock the picture in with even a mat and a frame, it kind of dresses it up quite a bit. I don't know if I have this call it. Sometimes I call it like the mat makes it. You know, this gives you an idea what it looks like. Now, as far as this goes, probably I went a little bit heavy with a pencil in places, and I didn't happen to have an eraser handy, but you can erase right through the paint if you don't want some of the pencil marks to show in there, or you could make it like a sailboat going by, you know, just paint it a little bit white of a sail and whatnot. But that kind of gives you an idea. And what happens is that there's always some little touch-up, and there's always something that you see the next day after the picture's had a chance to dry out overnight that you can add to it and so forth. Or erase, if you will. Take away or add to it. That gives you an idea. Now, as far as comparing that one with this one, I started off probably relatively loose to begin with, and I don't think I did it. Well, with this one, I did next to nothing as far as drawing it first in pencil. I just started off, and to me, this kind of looks a little bit more freer and has a little bit more movement than this one has. Maybe we could make an emphasis on doing this again, on making more of an action, motion with some of the shapes. This looks, to me, a little bit calmer than that other one. But anyways, so practice the skies. Start off with, like I said, a wet wash and drop the color into that. And then go from there and make sure the sky is dry. Sometimes I do the water too, using the blue. So what I always tell folks, time's up, pressure's up, and we'll see you again next week. Okay? Or whenever.